Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're looking at something really profound: how video games and virtual worlds can help us understand complex, even tragic, real-world issues.
Yeah, it sounds interesting.
Our jumping-off point today is an article called
Okay.
Through the Eyes of an Avatar, a dialogue on freedom, imprisonment, and technology. Now, what's super interesting is that it's a conversation between Dr. Elhanan Gazit. He's an expert in gaming, the metaverse, and digital innovation,
I see.
and an AI named Claude.
Wow, an AI.
I know, right? I'm so excited to unpack this with you.
Yeah, using games to understand trauma.
Yeah.
It's an interesting premise, you know? It might seem a little counterintuitive at first,
Yeah.
but it actually has immense potential.
Totally. So the article starts off with Dr. Gazit explaining how he's used these virtual worlds to help people understand the concept of imprisonment,
Okay.
specifically focusing on Gilad Shaulit's captivity by Hamas.
Oh, right, yeah.
Shalit was, you might remember, an Israeli soldier who was held for over 5 years.
Yeah, I remember that. It was all over the news.
It was huge news, yeah.
What Dr. Gazit highlights so well is the limitation of traditional media when you're trying to convey this kind of experience. News reports or documentaries present the facts, sure, but they can't really put you in that person's shoes. They can't truly replicate the experience of being imprisoned.
Exactly, and that's where the power of virtual worlds comes in.
Right.
Dr. Gazit created this project called Pillars of Time.
Okay.
And essentially, it's a virtual world
Okay.
where each pillar represents one day of Shalit's captivity.
Wow.
So you navigate this world, but your movement is severely restricted, right?
Yeah.
You're only able to walk through these really narrow passages
Yeah.
between these towering pillars.
Oh, wow. So it gives you a sense of, like,
Yeah.
confinement.
Yeah. That restriction is so crucial.
Yeah.
Because it forces you to confront the reality of that confinement, the claustrophobia, the helplessness,
It's really putting you there.
putting you right there. Yeah. And you get such a visceral understanding that just reading statistics like, he was held for 1,941 days just doesn't,
It doesn't hit the same.
it doesn't hit the same, no.
You know, just reading numbers on a page.
It's not passive observation, it's active experience.
Right.
That difference is key, I think, for building empathy and understanding.
Yeah.
It's like that game Depression Quest,
Right.
where they limit your choices
Yeah.
to simulate what it actually feels like to live with depression.
Yeah, and I think that's really effective because by taking away gamers' agency,
Yes.
which is, that feeling of power and control,
Right.
that's usually like a core element of gaming,
Yeah.
you suddenly confront a very starkly different reality.
This gamer's agency, that feeling of being able to make choices and see how they play out,
Yeah.
it's really potent.
Yeah,
It's such a huge part of what makes gaming so appealing, I think.
absolutely. And game designers spend countless hours crafting mechanics and systems that feed into this sense of agency.
Right.
It's why games can be so engaging, even addictive at times.
Yeah.
But what Dr. Gazit suggests is that this power can be harnessed for something much deeper,
Yeah.
for social good.
And here's where it gets really interesting. He talks about using virtual worlds to create similar experiences, but for other real-world issues, right?
Yeah, wow.
Like the refugee crisis or climate change.
So like you're simulating.
Simulating those.
Yeah, like you're simulating like having to flee your home or living in a refugee camp.
Yeah, or having to face an uncertain future.
Right, or a simulation that allows you to truly grasp the impact of rising sea levels
Or wildfire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The possibilities are really quite vast.
But with such potential, there must be some ethical considerations as well, right? I mean, simulating these kinds of traumatic experiences,
Absolutely.
can't be taken lightly.
You're absolutely right. It's crucial to consider the potential for harm, especially when you're dealing with sensitive topics like trauma. Dr. Gazit emphasizes user control, always giving them the option to opt out or take breaks. He also discusses the importance of working with trauma experts and incorporating elements of hope and resilience.
That's a good point.
It's not just about portraying despair, it's also about showing how people overcome challenges and find solutions.
Right.
And how they build a better future.
I really like his idea of a virtual guardian angel to support users, especially if they're feeling overwhelmed. It's like having this digital companion to support you.
It's a brilliant concept. It really humanizes what can sometimes feel like a very isolating experience.
Yeah.
Remember, the goal here is to foster empathy and understanding, not to re-traumatize people.
Exactly. So at one point in the article, Dr. Gazit asks Claude, the AI, can you feel pain?
Wow, that's a pretty bold question in this context.
It is a bold question, yeah.
I'm curious how Claude responds to that.
Claude's answer is actually quite nuanced. It clarifies that while it can process information about pain and suffering,
Okay.
it doesn't actually experience pain in the same way that humans do.
Right, because it lacks
Lacks the biological,
the physical mechanism.
the mechanisms for subjective emotional experience. It emphasizes that it's programmed for healthful and ethical responses.
That's interesting. It raises important questions about consciousness and sentience.
It does.
Can an AI truly understand and empathize with human suffering, even if it doesn't experience it the same way?
Yeah, and it's a debate that philosophers and scientists are still grappling with. But it's interesting that Claude, while it acknowledges its limitations,
Yeah.
also expresses this desire to use its capabilities to address human suffering.
That willingness to help, even within its constraints, is quite remarkable.
It speaks to this programmed sense of ethical responsibility, even if it isn't, felt in the human sense.
Right.
But kind of shifting gears a bit,
Okay.
how do we measure the impact of projects like Clues of Time? Is it enough to track how many people visit the virtual world?
That's a crucial question. I don't think simple metrics like visitor counts are enough. We need to go deeper and understand the qualitative impact of the experience.
What do you mean by that?
Did the experience actually change people's perspectives? Did it make them more empathetic? Did it inspire action?
And this brings us to a significant point in the article, a call to action. Remember, this conversation was published right after the recent Hamas attacks and hostage crisis.
Right.
Dr. Gazit makes this very passionate plea for people to do something, anything, to help those who are still held captive.
So it goes from theoretical exploration to
real-world action.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he outlines specific actions that listeners can take.
Okay.
Like experiencing the Pillars of Time exhibit, sharing the story, participating in protests, contacting representatives, and supporting the families of the hostages.
So it's really connecting back to the theme of our deep dive.
Yeah, exactly.
The power of virtual worlds.
He argues that by experiencing these simulations, even briefly, we can begin to bridge the gap
Yes.
between ourselves and those who are enduring unimaginable hardship.
That's the ultimate goal, right? To use technology not to escape reality,
Yeah.
but to connect with it on a deeper, more empathetic level. Yes.
And hopefully inspire action and make a real difference in the world.
That connection is so important. He even avoids calling participants users, opting for actors instead, which really underscores the active role we have in shaping the world around us.
That's a powerful shift in terminology.
It is.
It reminds us that even in these simulated worlds, we have the agency to choose how we respond, engage, and act.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how these ideas connect back to what we were discussing earlier about user experience, or rather, actor experience, as Dr. Gazit prefers.
Right. Yeah.
When we think about the immersive power of games, how they can evoke such strong feelings, it makes you wonder about the potential for using those same mechanics to create really impactful experiences.
Like, how can you truly understand what it's like to be a refugee forced to flee your home unless you can somehow step into their shoes, even if it's just virtually?
Exactly, and that's where the power of these simulations comes in. They can provide a level of understanding that goes far beyond reading news articles or watching documentaries. It's about going beyond intellectual comprehension and actually feeling what it's like to be in those situations.
Yes, it's about tapping into empathy on a visceral level.
Right.
And Dr. Gazit argues that this is where technology can play a truly transformative role.
I'm curious, does he give any other examples of how these virtual worlds could be used to address specific issues?
He does. He mentions the potential for creating simulations that help people understand the realities of climate change. Imagine a virtual world where you can experience firsthand the effects of rising sea levels, extreme weather events, and other environmental challenges.
That would be incredible. I can see how that kind of immersive experience could be a real game changer in terms of raising awareness and inspiring action.
And that's precisely his point. He believes that these virtual worlds have the power to break through the noise and apathy that often surround these issues.
Because it's one thing to read about climate change in a textbook, right?
Right.
Or to see it on the news.
It's another thing entirely to actually feel the heat of a simulated wildfire.
Or witness the devastation of a virtual flood.
Exactly. And when people experience those things firsthand, even if it's just in a virtual world, it can have a profound impact on their understanding and their motivation to act.
It's like that old saying, seeing is believing.
Or, in this case, experiencing is believing.
Yeah.
And that brings us to a really interesting point that Dr. Gazit raises. He talks about the importance of moving beyond simple metrics when evaluating the impact of these virtual worlds.
You mean it's not enough to just count how many people visit the exhibit?
Right.
Okay.
He argues that we need to go deeper and understand the qualitative impact of these experiences.
What does that mean exactly?
It means asking questions like, did this experience change the way people think about the issue? Did it make them more empathetic towards those who are suffering? Did it inspire them to take concrete action?
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just about exposing people to information. It's about creating an experience that truly resonates with them emotionally and motivates them to make a difference.
And that's where the real power of these virtual worlds lies. They have the potential to not only inform, but also to transform.
It's a powerful vision, but I'm curious, how do we actually measure those kinds of qualitative impacts? It seems like it would be pretty challenging.
It is challenging, but Dr. Gazit offers some suggestions. He talks about the importance of collecting feedback from participants, conducting surveys, and analyzing the data to look for evidence of genuine engagement and behavioral change.
So it's about going beyond just counting heads and actually delving into the hearts and minds of the people who experience these simulations.
Exactly, and that's where the real work begins. It's not enough to just create these amazing virtual worlds. We have to make sure they're actually having the intended impact.
Which brings us back to the ethical considerations we discussed earlier. If we're going to be creating these powerful experiences,
Yes,
we need to be incredibly mindful of the potential for harm.
absolutely. Dr. Gazit stresses the importance of working with trauma experts, incorporating elements of hope and resilience, and always giving users the option to opt out or take breaks.
It's about finding that delicate balance between creating a truly impactful experience and ensuring the well-being of the participants.
Exactly. It's a responsibility we can't take lightly. But if we can get it right, the potential for good is truly immense.
And it's not just about individual impact, right?
No.
Dr. Gazit also talks about the potential for these virtual worlds to influence broader societal change.
Yes. He believes that by fostering empathy and understanding on a large scale, these simulations can help to shift public opinion, inform policy decisions, and ultimately create a more just and compassionate world.
That's a powerful vision. It's like harnessing the power of technology to build a better future.
And it all comes back to that fundamental human desire for connection and understanding.
Yeah.
We all want to feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
And these virtual worlds can provide a powerful platform for shared experience and collective action.
It's incredible to think about the possibilities. But I wonder, what are some of the challenges we might face in trying to realize this vision?
There are definitely challenges. One of the biggest is ensuring accessibility.
Oh, right.
How do we make sure that these virtual worlds are available to everyone regardless of their socioeconomic background or technological access?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
We don't want to create a situation where only the privileged few have access to these powerful tools for empathy and understanding.
Another challenge is overcoming skepticism.
Okay.
Some people might dismiss these virtual worlds as just games,
Right.
not taking them seriously enough to engage with them on a deeper level.
That's a fair point. We need to do a better job of communicating the potential of these technologies and demonstrating their value.
And then there's the challenge of sustainability.
Okay.
How do we ensure that these virtual worlds are maintained and updated over time so they can continue to have a lasting impact?
It's a complex undertaking, but I think the potential rewards are well worth the effort.
I agree. If we can harness the power of these technologies in a responsible and ethical way, we can create a world where empathy and understanding are not just abstract concepts, but lived experiences that drive real change.
And that's a future I think we can all get behind. It feels like we're really on the cusp of something revolutionary.
Yeah.
You know, we have these incredible tools that can transport us to different worlds.
Yeah.
Let us walk in someone else's shoes and experience things we never thought possible.
It really is a whole new way of learning and understanding, not just with our minds, but with our hearts as well.
And think that all of this potential stemmed from something that a lot of people still perceive as just entertainment, video games.
Right.
It's incredible.
It's a real testament to the power of human ingenuity.
Yeah.
We're constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible, and I think we're only just beginning to scratch the surface of what these technologies can do.
I totally agree. It's like we've opened a door to a whole new dimension of human experience.
And that dimension is filled with both incredible opportunities and some very profound challenges as well.
We've talked a lot about the potential benefits of using these virtual worlds to foster empathy and understanding, but what about the risks?
That's a crucial question, and it's one that Dr. Gazit addresses directly in the article.
Okay.
He acknowledges that these technologies could be misused, even weaponized.
In what ways?
Well, for example, imagine a virtual world that's designed to promote hatred or prejudice, or a simulation that's used to desensitize people to violence.
That's a chilling thought. It's a reminder that any tool, no matter how powerful, can be used for good or for evil.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important to have these conversations, to think critically about the ethical implications of these technologies, and to develop safeguards to prevent the misuse.
It's like we're standing at a crossroads.
Yeah.
We can choose to use these technologies to build bridges and connect with one another, or we can use them to build walls and further divide ourselves.
It's a choice that we all have a responsibility to make, and it's a choice that will have profound consequences for the future of humanity.
This conversation has really opened my eyes to the complexities of this issue. It's not just about technology. It's about our values, our ethics, and our vision for the future.
I think that's a perfect way to sum it up. Ultimately, these technologies are a reflection of ourselves. They're tools that we can use to amplify our best qualities or our worst. It's up to us to decide which path we want to take.
Well, this deep dive has been incredibly thought-provoking and inspiring, and it's given me a lot to think about.
Yeah.
I'm sure our listeners feel the same way.
I hope so, and I hope it's sparked a desire in all of us to use these technologies in a way that benefits humanity and creates a more just and compassionate world.
That's a goal we can all strive for. Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive, and I want to thank you for sharing your insights and expertise with us today.
It's been my pleasure, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of this really important conversation.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.